In Mexico, started the judicial process to determine the criminal responsibility of the alleged perpetrators of the events that resulted in a fire that caused the death of 39 asylum seekers and injuries to 28 more foreigners. The International Court of Justice, based in The Hague, the Netherlands, ruled that the United States illegally froze some Iranian assets that do not belong to the Central Bank of the Islamic Republic. In India, the death toll in the collapse of the Hindu temple during a festival in the Madhya Pradesh region in the center of the country has risen to 35. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. On Thursday, Mexican authorities started the judicial process to determine the criminal responsibility of the possible or alleged perpetrators of the events that resulted in a fire that caused the death of 39 asylum seekers and the injuries to 28 more foreigners. This was announced by the Mexican government through a press conference given by the head of the Secretariat of Security and Citizen Protection, Rosa Isela Rodriguez, and the Specialized Prosecutor for Human Rights of the Attorney General's Office, Sara Irene Herrerias. The authorities announced that of the 28 injured, one migrant was discharged for medical care. According to the report, the medical government or the federal government detected irregularities on the part of the private security company CAMSA, in charge of guarding the migrant centers, for which the administrative process was initiated to take the corresponding sanctions. Now we move on to other topics. Peru's Congress has postponed the decision to initiate a formal vacancy motion process against the country's president, Dina Boluarte, amid protests in front of the parliament. Several political and social organizations gathered in front of the Congress on Thursday to protest against the delay of the vacancy motion and hold Boluarte responsible for repressing and murdering more than 60 citizens during the protests against her in the past, as well as for usurping power. On the other hand, Congress informed on its official Twitter account on Thursday it was putting off the decision over the vacancy motion against Boluarte, without revealing the reason for the decision. The vacancy motion accuses the president of being morally unfit for the office. Meanwhile, it is unclear whether legislators will gather the 52 votes needed to initiate formal vacancy proceedings. If so, 87 votes will be needed to remove Dina Boluarte from office. In Argentina, Frente de Todos Deputy Gisela Marciota presented on Thursday a bill to grant amnesty to the Argentine social leader Milagros Sala, who has been detained for 7 years. The initiative is backed by legislators of that alliance, Nobel Peace Prize winner Adolfo Pérez Esquivel, human rights organizations, the Association of State Workers, and the Tupac Amaru Group, whose members marched to the vicinity of Congress to express their support. The bill proposes amnesty with respect to all the facts considered criminal related to the political and social activity of the Tupac, for which its members have been charged, prosecuted, or convicted since December 1st, 2015 to the present. Milagro became the most important leader in Jujuy. Her leadership for the ruling classes is seen as defiant. Currently, she is under house arrest, and multiple organizations have denounced the humiliation, abuse, and attacks she has suffered. The official final results of the legislative elections held in Cuba on March 26 confirmed the selection of the 470 deputies who will form the country's new National Assembly. This was informed at a press conference on Thursday by the president of the National Electoral Council, Alina Balseiro Gutierrez. Balseiro said that out of 8,129,321 registered voters, 6,167,605 went to the polls for a 75.87% turnout. The president of the electoral entity reiterated that the whole process will end on April 19th, when the new National Assembly is expected to start its 5-year 10th legislature and select out of its members the Council of the State and the President and Vice President of the Republic. And following the decision of Ecuador's Constitutional Court, the impeachment process now returns to the National Assembly for it to move forward. Let's see how this process that seeks to prosecute the President of Ecuador, Guillermo Lasso, over corruption charges has been progressing.
The ruling of Judge Richard Ortiz declaring the admissibility of the impeachment trial against the head of state was approved by the Constitutional Court. A key element for the approval was the vote in favor of at least 6 of the 9 members of said body. Initially, the court appointed Judge Teresa Núñez, who, on Monday, delivered a draft proposal suggesting the court not to admit the impeachment trial. However, her proposal only received 3 votes in favor, meaning it was not approved. The recently approved proposal will now go to the National Assembly, whose President, Virgilio Saquicela, will present it before the Legislative Board of Directors within 3 days so the process can officially begin. The legislative body will then forward it to the Oversight Committee of the Parliament, which will notify President Guillermo Lasso so he can exercise his right to a defense and present his response to the accusations. The plenary will debate and finally make a decision. If it reaches 92 votes in favor, which constitutes a qualified majority of the Assembly members, Lasso will be impeached and removed from his duty as head of state. In addition, he will not be able to hold public office for the following 2 years. This is the first time in more than 90 years that an Ecuadorian president is the subject of an impeachment trial. The original request reached the court on March 24th after the National Assembly approved a report accusing him of corruption in a series of shady businesses within public companies.
Let's take a short break. But first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us.
Get your body.
Welcome back. In the United States, a New York grand jury has voted to indict former President Donald Trump after investigating hush money payments made on his behalf during his 2016 presidential campaign. The grand jury has been probing Trump's involvement in a $130,000 payment made in 2016 to the adult movie star Stormy Daniels to keep her from going public about a sexual encounter she said with the Republican years earlier. Trump has denied the encounters occurred and says he did nothing wrong, casting the investigation as a witch hunt by a Democratic prosecutor bent on sabotaging the Republicans' 2024 presidential campaign. The 76-year-old Republican will be the first former or sitting president to be charged with a crime, appending Trump's 2024 White House bid. The International Court of Justice, based in The Hague, the Netherlands, ruled on Thursday that the United States illegally froze some Iranian assets that do not belong to the Central Bank of the Islamic Republic. The court ordered the U.S. to pay a compensation, the amount of which will be determined within 24 months. If not, the court will initiate a new procedure to determine the amount to be paid. However, the court declared that it does not have jurisdiction over $1.75 billion in frozen assets of the Iranian Central Bank. The case was initially filed by Iran against the United States in 2016 for allegedly breaching their 1955 Friendship Treaty by allowing U.S. courts to freeze assets of Iranian companies and citizens. And following a severe drought last summer, which parched most of France, President Emmanuel Macron went to the Zavin-les-Lacs commune in the French Alps to present a water sobriety plan for all industries in preparation for possible situations of great stress this next summer.
Regarding energy, we will ask each sector to draw up a water sobriety plan by summer. In the next few days, the minister will bring together all the sectors concerned: energy, industry, tourism, leisure, agriculture. It works when everyone knows what the situation is, when everyone is made aware of their responsibilities, and when we know that it is a shared effort. But we do know that because of the specificity of certain territories, the isolation of certain communities, we cannot rule out situations of great stress next summer, in spite of this plan, which I will call of emergency and reduction of our consumption, therefore of sobriety.
And while Macron made his announcement outside, demonstrators gathered to state they are still in rebellion and unwilling to be appeased after the government forced through a highly unpopular pension reform. Protesters at the site were met with violence from anti-riot police.
Peacefully, and we are absolutely stunned to see how the riot police behaves when there is absolutely no need for it. For we have just come to express our discontent, and they not only forbid us to be there, but they have crushed us. It's sheer violence. We are here because we are not satisfied with the reforms, and especially because we are not being heard, and we don't have rights anymore.
He's evading the issue. Supposedly he's come to talk about water to appease. But in fact, at this point, we don't want to be appeased at all. This is a rebellion.
And the Vatican announced that Pope Francis is better and back to work, dispelling concerns about the health of the head of the Catholic Church. The director of the Holy See Press Office, Matteo Bruni, said in a statement on Thursday that the health of 86-year-old Holy Father is progressively improving. The spokesperson reported that after breakfast today, the Pope read some newspapers and went back to work. However, the head of the Catholic Church's next scheduled meetings have been cancelled so that he can continue with his treatment in the hospital for a few more days. Pope Francis was admitted to a Roman hospital since Wednesday as a result of a pulmonary infection. Cuban and Chinese authorities analyzed the state of cooperation in the fields of telecommunications, biotechnology, and health, as well as the possibilities for the expansion of these agreements. At a meeting in Beijing on Friday, the island's Deputy Prime Minister, Jorge Luis Perdomo, and the authorities of the Asian giant agreed to continue developing projects in fields of biotechnology, cybersecurity, health, and telecommunications. Both nations will study projects to integrate Cuba into China's Silk and Belt and Road Initiative as part of a joint cooperation. This is the beginning of an agenda that will also include future meetings with Cuban government authorities and Chinese companies for the strengthening of their binational relations. In Turkey, the Grand National Assembly ratified the protocol on Finland's membership in NATO. The Turkish parliament was the last among the 30 members of the alliance to ratify Finland's membership after Hungary's legislature approved a similar bill earlier this week. Before Finland officially becomes a member of NATO, an exchange of letters will take place, after which Helsinki's accession documents must be formally submitted to the U.S. State Department, which serves as the alliance's depository under the 1949 NATO founding treaty. On March 23rd, the Foreign Affairs Commission of the Turkish Parliament considered the ratification of Finland's protocol on NATO membership, adopted it, and subsequently submitted it to Parliament for consideration. And the Syrian Arab Army repelled a new attack perpetrated by Israeli forces against the province of Damascus. This is the second aggression by Tel Aviv in 24 hours. According to the Ministry of Defense, on Thursday, Israel carried out an air aggression with missiles from the Golan Heights to destroy the capital. The entity pointed out that the last two Israeli bombings have left 2 wounded, multiple material damages, and a discontinuity in the unloading of humanitarian aid to the country. Finally, the military institution pointed out this kind of aggressions by Israel on Syrian territory prolongs the war, maintains instability in the nation, and weakens the national army. TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and Enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Friday, in India, the death toll in the collapse of a Hindu temple during a festival in the Madhya Pradesh region in the center of the country has risen to 35. Rescue services continue to work in the area after the accident that took place on Thursday. According to authorities in the town of Indore, there is at least one person missing. The incident took place after the floor of the Balachewar Mahadev temple collapsed and dozens of people fell into a well in the midst of celebrations of the festival known as Ram Navami, which marks the birth of the Hindu god Ram. The government of the region attributed the accident to overweight, overcrowding, and heavy footsteps of people passing by. On Thursday, a Senegalese court gave opposition politician Ousmane Sonko a 2-month suspended prison sentence for defaming a minister. Ousmane Sonko, 48, had to answer for defamation, insults, and forgery against the Minister of Tourism, Mame Mbaye Niang. In addition to the 2-month suspended prison sentence, the court fined Mr. Sonko, who was absent from the hearing, 300,000 euros to be paid to the minister. It released him from the offenses of insult and forgery. According to Sonko's legal team, the opposition politician is still eligible to run in the presidential elections in 2024. Uganda deployed 1,000 troops to the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo as part of the East African Community's operations to preserve security in that nation. The community reported on Thursday that Ugandan military troops have been fully deployed to support the ceasefire and the restoration of peace between the Congolese army and the M23 rebels. The multinational forces employ soldiers from Uganda, Burundi, and Kenya, and is intended to contain the M23 rebels who launched attacks on Congolese army positions in June last year and occupied several areas. And the African Union, the AU, and Canada-based international non-profit agency Nutrition International have launched a campaign aimed at reducing malnutrition, particularly in teenage girls. According to African Union release, the initiative, launched during a high-level dialogue on nutrition financing in Maseru, Lesotho, also seeks to improve the health, well-being, and empowerment of girls in Africa through efforts to prevent iron deficiency anemia. On the issue, AU Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, Minara Zamante Zezuma, called for advocacy action to prioritize teenage nutrition in AU member states. Zezuma recalled that anemia affects cognitive functioning, compromises school performance, reduces productivity, and affects current and future reproductive health.
Suffering from acute malnutrition has soared.
Now we move on to other topics. In Malawi, death toll could rise to 1,200 after Cyclone Freddy. The death toll from Cyclone Freddy, which dissipated in mid-March after massive flooding and landslides in southern Africa, could exceed 1,200 in Malawi as hopes dwindle of finding survivors, police and authorities said on Thursday. The cyclone killed at least 676 people in Malawi. The country's disaster management department says the chances of finding the 538 missing more than 2 weeks after the disaster have become painfully slim. Search operations with sniffer dogs are continuing in some places, its head Charles Kalemba said on Wednesday, but no longer it hard-hit volunteer, as the team on the ground has informed that they have done their best. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.